Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This week on Debate at 8, we are talking about gun control. The clock has started. So, let's meet our panel. To my left, we have Paul from Florida, who is a pro-gun. And over here, to my right, we have Romeo, an exchange student from Australia who has anti-gun views. So, let's begin. Last week, the world sat and watched as tragic events that took place in Parkland, Florida, where a 19-year-old boy gunned down 17 innocent American citizens. It's not the first time we've seen a school shooting like this one, but could it be the last? Is it time to finally tackle the problem at its root and abolish guns, or is it already too late? Let's start over here with you, Paul. What do you make of the recent events in Florida?
Well, obviously, this strikes very close to home. We're talking about friends of friends here. It's difficult to be here in the UK instead of being home comforting my fellow Floridians. I think we can all agree, however, that regardless of political views, no one wants to ever see this happen to anybody else.
Okay, thank you. And Romeo, what do you make of the recent events?
I mean, yeah, no one wants to see this happen on any side of the debate. I think it is clear, though, that if this person, like all the other individuals that have committed similar atrocities, if they did not have such easy access to guns, then this just plainly wouldn't have happened at all. And I think that's what we should be looking at, the abolition of guns and seeing how we can work towards ending these events.
Brilliant. So for you, it is the nature of abolishing guns?
Yes, for sure. I mean, if you look at the UK and Australia, after their Port Arthur and their massacres there, they got rid of guns and the mass shootings had stopped.
I think the root problem here is violence, not guns. If you look at 2014, at the intentional homicide rate from the UN, the US had 12,996 intentional homicides that year, which ranks 9th out of 86. But once you adjust for population, that ranking goes down to 44th out of 86. So things are not quite as what they seem in the United States.
Excellent. Okay, so some very interesting answers there. Let's see what the public think about the matter.
I think there's more in America than there is here because of the amount of people in America who do like hunting and stuff.
Well, it seems a lot of those so-called school massacres have been put down to people who have mental health issues.
Restrictions is going to be a lot easier to get like people over the age of 21, people without mental disabilities who shouldn't be able to own a gun.
I am banned as a law-abiding citizen from owning a firearm, but criminals seem to be able to get access to those weapons.
So we can see some really varying opinions there. There's no clear-cut answer or solution, but it appears a solution is needed after the events in Florida last week. We have some images from that now, which some may find distressing.
Holy
Now, we all obviously agree that the constant threat of attacks like these just cannot go on. But how can we prevent things like this from happening? Could it be by reducing the amount of guns in circulation, for example? Romeo?
I think it's clear cut. You definitely can. It's already been prevented in other Western countries that are closely aligned with the US. You see Australia, after the Port Arthur massacre, the guns were abolished straight away, and we haven't seen a mass shooting there since then. Similar events, I believe, have happened in the UK, in Scotland in 1996. It's clear that once you abolish guns, the mass shootings stop, and I think the US needs to follow that trend of their friends in Australia and the UK?
I think if our goal is to protect innocent people, eliminating guns should not be our first priority. Whether it's a gun that kills somebody or a truck or a knife or a bomb, the fact of the matter is that people are still dead. Or even, let's look at some other things. From the CDC in 2014, over 650 people died from abortion, over 250,000 from medical errors, compared to just 8,000 from firearms, and 248 of those were from semi-automatic rifles, just 2% of murders. So we really need to get our priorities in check in terms of trying to limit violence.
Okay, so that's all well and true, but let's talk about it in the scope of attacks here within the UK, as this is where most of our audience are from. The UK tends to exist as a very peaceful little island, but gun crime has been seen in our history. Let us not forget the Dunblane massacre in 1996, resulting in 16 children and 1 teacher being shot dead. This is one of the most despicable and notorious crimes ever committed in the UK. So with that in mind, what can we make of that in spite of what's happened in Florida?
Well, I think if we look at what other countries have done to curb gun violence, it could translate well to the United States, particularly Switzerland, which was rated as 2018's #1 best overall country to live in by US News. Their last mass shooting was in 2001, and the country has about 2 million privately owned guns in a nation of just 8.3 million people. In 2016, the country had just 47 homicides with firearms, and the country's overall murder rate is 0. Their secret to success is keeping guns out of the hands of people who have mental health issues and people who have committed crimes.
I think that it's a unique situation in Switzerland. They're culturally different for one. They're more Eurocentric, and they're politically different as well. They're politically neutral in terms of international relations, and their relationships with guns and the public are also quite different. If the US is to look to other countries, there's no point looking at Switzerland when we can just look at Australia and the UK. It's the two nations we are closely aligned with, that the US is closely aligned with, and it makes sense to follow the trends that they've set. I think it makes the most sense.
Excellent. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you both there. We've unfortunately run out of time tonight. I would like to thank our brilliant panel for such detailed thoughts and opinions on a very serious topic. Thank you for watching, and good evening.